Hi, everyone. First of all, let me say thank you for those of you that sent me messages and kind notes over the past week, and I appreciate your all's patience. I did make a giant trip from Palo Alto to Bakersfield, California, from Bakersfield, California to the Bitterroot Valley in Montana, to the Flathead Valley in Montana, and then back to Bakersfield and now back in Palo Alto. So I appreciate your all's patience and sorry for the inconvenience of my having to be away from class during that time. There's not much you can do about that, but yeah, it's not the most convenient for you all in the middle of class. Um, Thank you all for those of you that turned in your praise. I will turn my attention, and Andy as well, to grading those over the next few days, and we'll try to get them back to you within a week or so. So I wanted to send out a quick video of how to have a successful week 5. So we're coming up on the midweek of our course, or the midpoint of our course, and this week's a little bit lighter reading. I'm assuming that you had an intense week last week, so I'm kind of intentionally giving you a little lighter reading with the article. And then I'm also giving you space to maybe start your reading for the next couple of weeks, because we're going to read this book the next week, Racial Conflict and Healing by Andrew Sung Park. And you'll find in it some echoes of some of the things that you've seen over the last 2 to 3 months with the Black Lives Matter movement, some of the things that have been going down in cities and those kinds of things. And so Park does a good job, especially in the first half of the book, articulating what it means to experience sin generationally. So I hope you enjoy that. That will springboard into a conversation, hopefully on race, and we'll be talking about some of those things in class. And that will then lead to the next book, which is Randy Woodley's book, Shalom and the Community of Creation. And so you can get a little bit of a head start on those couple of books this week as well if you want to. I will be posting some lectures, a little bit of catch up as we do kind of rewind from week 3, when we talked about doing ethics from the margins. So we did overarching, we did some ethical theory with Stassen, with Wright, and with Hayes. And then we turned our attention to Miguel de la Torre, Emily Towns, and Marsha Riggs to remind us that we need to do ethics from the margins as well, not just from the center of academia or the center of culture or the majority of culture, but to get a full breadth of Christian ethics, we need to come at it from different angles, from those on the that help to define culture, and then from those who experience that definition in different kinds of ways. So those 3 articles were in that vein, and we'll continue that kind of trajectory as we look at Park and we look at Woodley. Again, 2 different communities that in some ways have been minoritized, some stronger than others. So we'll look at those 2 so you can get a head start on that. But we'll talk about, in some lectures, we'll talk about what does it mean to do ethics from the margins, and how does that relate to doing it in kind of the academic theory and those kinds of things. So I'll have a couple of lectures. We'll talk about the dimensions of character ethics and what kind of features go into an ethical decision. We all think that we're making them biblically or rationally, but there's much more that goes into an ethical decision than just our study of the scriptures and or our thinking rationally about a specific ethical topic. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll all kind of break down really Miguel de la Torre's book, or the parts of the book that you read when he talks about liberation theology, because we need to talk about that in relationship to the article that you're reading. This week is an article that I wrote called Genesis and the Abundant Life. And that's my connection of my work on trying to connect John and what John is trying to do in the gospel, in his gospel, to talk about the life that Jesus offers and then connecting that back to the creation narrative and the life that was created good by God and then was corrupted by sin, and how deep that corruption runs in the first 11 chapters of Genesis, and then God's redemptive work, starting in Genesis chapter 12, on how he's going to accomplish redeeming the world and humanity back to himself. And so you'll be reading that article, which will tie nicely into the park reading, and especially into Shalom and the community of creation reading. So when we talk about Miguel de la Torre, when we do a lecture, we're going to talk about liberation ethics and liberation theology a little bit, and we're going to try to connect it to this vision of life, because what I find in liberation theology and ethics grounded in liberation theology is that it seems true and important that in De La Torre's emphasis on liberation from sin and the consequences of sin and the sin done to one another, that that liberation is an important point of that, but it's not the ending point of it. That it is, the goal is the life that Jesus offers. And I want to talk about that life in those 5 relationships from the article. So we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically in a lecture. So there will be a couple lectures that I'll post this week. One tomorrow, probably one on Wednesday, and maybe one on Thursday. So be looking for that. So you have a little bit of light reading. You can get a head start on some of your reading for the next couple weeks. And then there will be some lectures that I'll post to class. Also, you should begin to start thinking about your final project. In week 10, you're going to put together a proposal for your final project, and you're going to turn that in lieu of a discussion and reading. And so you should be thinking about some kind of ethical topic that you would like to write your final research paper on, and then you can begin to build a proposal on that. So that's just forecasting a little bit out in the future of what, as you're reading and as you do your group project, things that are coming up, maybe marking things that stand out to you that you might want to further research. Okay, look forward to grading your papers. I hope you have a nice, kind of a little easier week this week to catch up, take your breath, maybe catch up on some other classes if you're taking other classes, or just life and family or those kinds of things. And then look for the lectures that I'll post over the next couple of days.